Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to Learning Loss and COVID Slide, a panel about literacy and a conversation that's being held by the Caskey Area Chamber Education Division. My name is Robert Long. I am the proud chair of the Education Division Committee here at the Caskey Area Chamber, and we are so excited to kick off our education programming season for the 21-22 school year, starting with this great, incredible discussion around what we've been finding and hearing in our communities about COVID-19. The Caskey Education Committee works to support and inform business overall and the overall Caskey community. We believe that all Caskey students deserve a level playing field and equal access to a quality public education. We also believe that our public schools represent our greatest hope for educating and preparing the 5.5 million kids in the state of Texas. We would like to thank you all for taking time, both our in-person guests and our folks who are joining us online, to learn more about what our esteemed panelists of experts have to say. So just a couple of logistics for you all. This is being recorded. The panel discussion will be provided by the Caskey Area Chamber on their website and Facebook exactly 2 hours at the conclusion of this in-person discussion. Each panelist has been assigned a speaking order within each question, and each panelist will be given 1 minute for opening remarks and then 2 minutes to address each question. Before we move on to introducing our panelists, esteemed experts and panelists, I would like to first jump off by saying being in this community and working alongside Caskey ISD, you guys have done an incredible job of just not only taking care of the kids' education and academic needs in a time where there was no manual, there was no blueprint, but also feeding kids, getting them hotspots, making sure they had broadband access, getting them disinfectant, anything that the kids needed in Caskey. You guys worked tirelessly to make it happen during this unprecedented pandemic. So kudos to you all. Everywhere I go throughout the committee, parents, lawmakers, what have you, they're all are really proud of the job that Dr. Gregorski and his team, you guys have been just really leading for the benefit of kids. So thank you for that. So without further ado, you guys are in for a huge treat today because we've assembled experts on national and local level to provide us with some insight around this complex issue. So we're going to begin to unpack what learning loss is, what COVID slide looks like, feels and sounds like in the Caskey ISD, starting with our panelists and experts. And I'm going to start, and you'll stand when I introduce you. Dr. Kristen Caskey serves as the Chief Academic Officer for Caskey ISD. Christine oversees the Division of Teaching and Learning, which includes the following major areas: curriculum and instruction, assessment and accountability, special education, campus instructional support, ESL, bilingual programming, interventions, fine arts, career and technical education, gifted and talented services, guidance and counseling, as well as federal grants programs. The primary function of the Division of Teaching and Learning is to support campuses through the development and implementation of high-quality curriculum, research-based instructional practices, programs, and assessment that support student learning and student outcomes. In addition, this division provides professional learning opportunities for district educators to ensure that they have the content knowledge and instructional skills to effectively deliver and support the implementation of Caskey ISD curriculum. Dr. Caskey has over 30 years of experience in public education in both large and suburban district settings. She holds a doctorate in education administration from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and believes in providing all students with relevant and engaging learning environments that spark their imagination and creativity, which lead to student success and student outcomes. Let's welcome Dr. Caskey. Thank you, Dr. Caskey. We also have Dr. Sinai Bell, who is the Executive Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning in Caskey ISD. She has also served as an elementary and junior high principal, assistant principal, teacher, and coach. In 2015, Dr. Bell was recognized as the Caskey ISD Elementary Principal of the Year. She earned her doctorate degree in educational leadership with an emphasis around curriculum and instruction from the University of Houston, Clear Lake. Dr. Bell is passionate about authentic and purposeful learning for students and teachers, and she has a strong passion for leadership and its impact on teacher engagement, student learning, and overall school climate and culture. Dr. Bell recognizes her impact as a leader and uses her role to inspire, motivate, and empower others. Dr. Bell has presented not only at the state and national, but also at international conferences and has contributed to several publications, including Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, and has been a guest on several podcasts focused on leadership impact. So let's welcome Dr. Bell. And I am also rounding out, if this wasn't enough knowledge, right? We have a national expert on our panel, and I'm super excited to finally have the opportunity to collaborate with you. We've been talking about this for some years, Dr. Weeden, so this is a blessing to have it, and I'm really excited for the Katy community to hear her expertise and her lens. So Dr. Tracy Weeden is a seasoned and passionate leader dedicated to advancing literacy and academic excellence for students and adults. With a doctorate in educational leadership, Dr. Weeden has spent her career creating and building innovative programs, systems, and teams focused on providing enhanced learning opportunities and exceptional outcomes for students. Dr. Weeden is a true visionary when it comes to improving the world through education. Her innovative style of leadership, combined with her passionate and engaging nature, enables her to successfully manage the growth across diverse constituent base, including boards of trustees, donors, staff, parents, teachers, educational partners, and her students. In her current role as president and CEO of NIHouse, she provides leadership and support in the areas of financial management, recruitment, development of staff, fundraising initiatives, initiating and furthering relationships with all of their partners, including guidance of professional and public relationships. Prior to joining NIHouse, Dr. Weeden was the Executive Director of Academic Planning for Huffle & Mifflin Harcourt Intervention Services Group, and which was recently acquired by Scholastic. In this capacity, Dr. Weeden provided executive consulting nationally on development of systems that help school districts improve student outcomes, student achievement, and address barriers to rigorous and relevant learning. Prior to being at Scholastic, she spent more than 5 years as Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for HISD. Dr. Weeden, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. Just a note to our audience, Dr. Terry Mainstage, who is the Chief Academic Officer for Lamar Consolidated, and Dr. Kendra Strange, Associate Superintendent for Royal ISD, both send their regrets. They were not able, their schedules didn't allow for them, because we did move this event a couple of times, but they do send their love and their warmth. And so now that we've had the introductions, we can get on with the meat of the discussion, so I'm excited. So just to frame this out, for those of you at home who really don't understand, you've heard a lot about learning loss and COVID slide, and there's a lot of other acronyms and names. You know, educators are great. We're great at coming up with an acronym, right? And it's really just to help us mindset and mind shift our faculty to, really get to the task at hand. But for you who don't, I'm gonna give you a little frame out of what that looks like. So when the pandemic hit, it caused a suspension of face-to-face instruction in schools during COVID-19 pandemic, and it led to lots of concerns around student learning. Learning loss among K-12 students as a result of this coronavirus pandemic is real and it's measurable. Unfinished learning through the pandemic exacerbates historical inadequacies, especially for students of color. Parents have reported increases in mental health conditions and concerns around their student behavior. Absenteeism among students in 8th through 12th grade has increased significantly, probably meaning to them having to change roles, right? Like parents losing jobs, they're having to step up, take care of siblings, go to work and do those things. And then this economic gap caused by the pandemic related unfinished learning adds to the existing disparities amongst all our groups. So what we know is that nothing really beats classroom instruction. We know that, right? But after about a year of school closings and distance learning amid coronavirus, more than half of public schools, K through 12 teachers, said that the pandemic resulted in significant learning losses from students, both academically and socially emotional. And we have researchers who have backed that up as well. Data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also suggested that virtual learning might present more risk than in-person related to child and parental mental, emotional, and health because of the lack of socialization and the lack of contact. Because a lot of them live in isolation and their parents are working paycheck to make ends meet, so they don't have that time. So that gives a little context about first of all, what learning loss looks like and what COVID slide is, really. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weeden, who's going to give us a little 2-minute overview of what this looks like at the national level. Dr. Weeden.
Thank you, Dr. It's such an honor to be with you today, and I'm going to start by framing this in a positive way that gives us our power in this moment that has provided us all with so many challenges. I have decided to frame this dynamic of the pandemic as a COVID chrysalis. We can either get bitter or better as we go through this process. This is a moment where we can decide to reinvent education and rethink education, because all arrows must be pointing in the same direction. If we have a vision for what we do educationally through the promise of public schools will allow all children to thrive in a 21st century economy. And I frame that through the lens of literacy, which is my passion. I'm from Detroit. The reason I'm in this space with you today is because I have access to what I call the currency of power. Reading, writing, and presenting your ideas by understanding the structure of the English language and having that translate in schools with a seamless safety net, whether a child is coming through navigating the war zone of poverty, coming to school every day with so many barriers to learning, but having those educators who deserve honor and respect waiting for them to serve them, even in the midst of this war we're in against the pandemic. And so with 35% of our students being proficient nationally based on the National Assessment of Educational Progress, that means there's a critical mass of children who are below grade level, and that has been exacerbated. So we need to take our power back and be sure we have this national and local moonshot of ensuring every child learns to read, is a skilled reader, a skilled writer, and skilled in sharing their ideas, because that is the currency of the 21st century in a knowledge economy.
Thank you for that insight, Dr. Weeden. So 35%, only 35% of nationally students proficient. Wow, that's startling. And what's interesting is, even in the Katy Times this week, there's a conversation, a whole article just about schools working to address testing shortfalls. But I got a news flash for you. We got the experts right here. And so we're going to dive right into those questions right now so we can get into it. And we're going to start with Dr. Caskey. So I'm going to ask the question. If you need me to repeat it, I can repeat it as many times, because I want to make sure that those folks there in the audience really understand the high level work that's been going on. Not only, I don't even think you guys got a summer. Did you get a week? Did you get at least a week off?
Yeah, 4th of July.
4th of July, I know it well. So as a principal for 9 years, that was the only week, and that's the most expensive week.
That's right.
It's the most expensive week to book anything. But if you're an administrator in a public school that has Title I populations, you cannot leave before July 1st because you got to hire those teachers. And teaching shortage, that's a whole nother, we could have a whole nother panel on the teacher pipeline. And if you like that, that might be coming up next, right? So, but can you just share with us, Dr. Caskey, some of the academic, no, that's not the right question. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. I got so excited, I went ahead of myself. So just share with us really, what is learning loss? What is COVID slide, and how has it manifested in the KDIC community from your lens?
Okay, great. We've been anxious all year to get scores. There is no state accountability this year, and a lot of debate around whether the STAR should be given or not given. But in the state of Texas, we were moving forward with our state assessments, so we were very anxious to get that data back and start looking at our data and digging in. And I can tell you, as a learning organization and as one of the best, probably the best school districts in the state of Texas, KDIC, we were very, very pleased with our results of our students. They came in to take that assessment back into our buildings. Our participation rates were high. And as you look at our overall test scores, I know Tracy mentioned literacy, our reading scores did not dip significantly. At the elementary level, we had a 4 percentage point dip, and junior high was 3. And actually at the high school level, our English 1 and English 2 scores were higher than they were in 2019. What surprised us really is what we term learning loss or unfinished learning that hit us the hardest, and the same is true across the state of Texas, and that was in the area of mathematics. And we believe that that's because of how students learn mathematics, not being able to have some of these hands-on type of experiences as we transition to the online learning platform. But that is the area that kind of set us back the furthest, again, not only in Katy, but across the state of Texas. So that's where our focus is going to lie in mathematics. At the elementary level, it was science. So students didn't have those science labs and those hands-on experiences. So from the big picture, we're looking more at math and science.
So in your data, it really spoke to kids not having those relational interconnection pieces as being like having that hands-on science. Because I remember being an elementary teacher, my kids always retained more when they experienced the science part, when they actually had to go. And even I just think about all the different safety protocols we even have to do, like with a lot of kindergartners trying to deal with Play-Doh or any type of science. So that's very interesting. So Dr. Bell, same question from your lens, working from that secondary piece as a part of Dr. Caskey's team. What is learning loss? What has COVID slide really looked at as it's manifested from your lens?
So I've experienced the pandemic in 2 ways. I just recently joined Dr. Caskey's team in January. Prior to that, I was a middle school principal. So I've seen it firsthand. I've planned for welcoming students back. And the one thing that I hold close to my heart is what a student said to me when he returned, maybe the 3rd grading period from virtual learning. His parents decided to send him back to school, and he came in. And it was a friend that spent a lot of time with us as administrators, and he said, I miss this place. I know we had some rough times before, but I miss this place. I'm so glad to be back. And so I know we're talking about COVID slide and instructional loss, and that's what we put in the headlines, right? That catastrophically depicts what we want to believe occurred. And yes, we know that there was a disruption in learning, and so there's going to be some things that set us back. There were some things that probably we could have done better, generally speaking, as an education profession prior to the pandemic. But what's really important is that when we talk about unfinished learning, it's not just the academic components, it's also the social components, the emotional components, and so we can't lose all of those pieces in a rush to get back to fixing this learning loss that has occurred. Like, we have to build back better, not build back the same. So knowing where all of our students are, getting to find out where we need to meet them and what we need to do to make those adjustments. When I think of it, I like unfinished learning because it reframes it in a way that helps us move forward.
Well, thank you. And I really can appreciate you talking about unfinished learning and then going back to Dr. Weeden and talking about this is an opportunity for us to reinvent. And that leads me to a lot of my work that I was doing in my role as a regional advocacy director for Raise Your Hand Texas was really about getting that federal money down to you guys, right? And so we have the money coming down, and now it's like, how are we going to put plans in place? But before we get there, I want to get your feedback, Dr. Weeden, from hearing this, because you work with lots of districts around the nation, providing resources of support to help them navigate some of these uncharted waters, for lack of a better term. What is your lens around the COVID slide and learning loss and unfinished learning?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to give a shout out to these wonderful ladies and thank you for your service. This is a war, and the first thing I'd say is let's validate educators and encourage them. This is a hard profession. And we have a whole nother conversation we could have, like we have a pipeline that is dry. People are not coming to the profession. I'm asking the parents out there, help put an oxygen mask on the teachers and leaders you respect and let them know you appreciate them and what they do. They need that encouragement. This is hard work. And I have special love for Katy ISD because that's where I got my first administrative experience as a campus leader, as someone who recruited teachers. And I saw that shortage back then, that was over a decade ago. So that's really important to put out there. I want us to rethink too about assessment. One high stakes test that is a snapshot on a day, a kid could have been navigating so many barriers that they weren't even able to fully express what they can do. It's something to really think about. Formative assessment is also extremely important data. And I know that Katie triangulates their data. What does growth look like over time for scholars? That is just as important and probably more important, because we want to make sure that children are growing a year, every year, or they can grow more than a year. Some of our teachers are so dynamic that they can grow children more than a year in 1 year. Strategies that I see across the nation are things like a third grade gate, where children are retained if they don't pass that high stakes test. That punishes the children. That doesn't empower the children. And so we need to think about how are we assessing, why are we assessing, and what are we really assessing? Are we assessing a child's privilege because they get to have a meal at night? They have a parent who can stay home and read to them at night? They have these advantages, and maybe that's more what we're measuring. We need a true picture of what we're measuring and be clear on why we're doing it.
Thank you for that. And that's, again, you've offered another perspective that we had not considered. My page is out of order, but that's okay. I know the next question anyway. So moving on to our second question, and this time I'm going to start with Dr. Bell, if that's okay. Can you share some of the academic supports that your district is putting in place to combat this phenomenon? Specifically, what is your district doing? And what do you think that parents need to know?
So one thing that we're doing, once you have one data point, what do you do with that? So we're assessing where we are, and I truly believe you build capacity in people, not programs. It could be really easy to fall into the trap of all these wonderful programs that are being promoted, and this is destined to be the silver bullet to address your unfinished learning or your learning loss. But I believe in building capacity in our teachers, and so providing them with the professional learning that they need in order to meet the needs of the students. There were some things that came from the pandemic that we learned to do really well. And so how do you capitalize on that? How do you continue to build capacity? How do you implement? How do you monitor? And how do you adjust? That's continuous improvement right there. This is going to be an adaptive challenge that's going to take us a while to learn some new things, to unlearn, to put some new practices in place to meet the needs of our kids. And so building up our people, training our teachers, building capacity, that is where we're really focusing our work.
So thank you for that, Dr. Bell. What I appreciate about that, and what actually inspires me to ask you another question, is you said, and because I've heard this from other district leaders and superintendents across the state, we learned to do things we didn't even know we could do. So can you give some of those specific examples of some of the things that you didn't even know that you could do that you're doing really well because of this?
Sure, absolutely. So we changed the way we serve kids on the drop of a dime. We knew at this point, I'm thinking back to as a principal last year at this time, we had to figure out how to open schools, right, virtually, and provide face-to-face learning at the same time. Like, we were trying to figure those things out. And so what teachers were...
With the same pot of money.
Absolutely. And really the same parameters.
Yes.
And A+ is what we do in Katy, so we had to figure out how to do what we do best in a different environment. And so what teachers had to learn quickly in order to deliver engaging lessons to our students, still connecting with our community, we still had to offer those things. That standard of excellence didn't change, but how we perform those. So learning new technologies, learning how to collaborate, learning how to really think outside of the box, and still connecting with our students. Those things didn't change. We just had to figure out, how do we do this in a virtual environment? So being open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, being flexible and adaptable, those are skill sets. So it's not about what tools did you use, what program did you use, it's about what skills did you learn. And that is what's going to take us through this next stage after the pandemic. Those skills are strengthened. And it was tough, and it wore us out, but that's what we do in education. We figure out what we need to do, and we make it happen for our kids.
Wow. That's great. Dr. Caskey, I tell you what, you got a star there, right?
I know.
She's like, that's why I hired her. Right?
Keep her around.
Got to keep her around. So, same question. Is there anything you would add to that? Your teammate did a glowing job.
She did. Just to add from more of a, I guess, like global perspective, if you will, you mentioned the federal dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just presented to our board last month our ESSER plan. So in Katy, we're receiving a little over $67 million.
Yes.
Yes, it's a lot of money. It's a whole lot of money. But, really when we look at those federal dollars, there are three main categories that we can spend it in. Number one is school safety, right? But in our school district, we did a great job with safety. We had, all the sanitation, the venting, the hand sanitizer, the mat, all of that. We took care of that before these dollars. So there are two other buckets that we're focusing on. One is that academic achievement support, right? And the second one, you mentioned it as well, is that social and emotional learning. Because we know that students are coming back and they're going to have specific needs that may not be directly related to the content and the learning. So what are we doing to put those types of supports in play? So some of the things that we're using our ESSER dollars for are career counselors at the high school level, really helping students to plug into what they want to do after high school. We feel like that's a huge piece to help students navigating those systems as they graduate from our school district, right? Secondly is social workers. We know that social workers play a critical role in our school district, and we've been working to build out our model and making sure that families have the resources that they need. So that's another piece of it. At the elementary level, looking at behavior interventionists. Many of our elementary students, especially after a year of perhaps not being in school, missing out on some of that type of learning where we learn how to interact with each other and how to do teamwork and how to collaborate and how to communicate with one another. So at the elementary level, we'll be hiring some behavior interventionists to help with some of our elementary students who are coming in who missed out on some of those skills. And then on the academic end of it, of course, we're looking at hiring additional teachers, additional academic support teachers, hiring tutors. We want those high-impact tutoring strategies. There's new legislation that's going to require tutoring for
House
students.
file 45.
45, you got it. 30 hours and 30 hours.
Yes.
So we're working through that.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole other segment,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah, so that's some of from a broader lens, if you will, of how we're going to be spending those federal dollars to support our students.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the breakdown. And I hope those viewers out there who are watching that really goes back and re-watches that piece, because that was a lot of great information about what's directly happening in your community to support and fight against this war, as Dr. Weeden so eloquently positioned. So I just lead back into you every time I do that, right?
Well, first of all, how amazing that there's an acknowledgement that it's the people who make the difference. It's like the church. It's not the building. It's the people and what they do, right? And so with that spirit and that investment in people power, great things will happen. I also appreciate what I'm hearing about wraparound supports. That's absolutely crucial. And it's a part of reinventing who we are. Those barriers to learning have always existed. Now we can seize this moment and look at all of those barriers to becoming a skilled reader and mathematician. In a knowledge economy, if we don't address those things, the children will not meet the mark. It can be done. One of the things I will say, because I'm thinking back to when we received Katrina, Hurricane Katrina came, and we received an influx of students, and this is when I was assistant soup in HIS State. I learned a lot about barriers to learning from that experience. And secondly, I think about the race to the top funds that came and how I decided to invest them as an assistant superintendent. What I know in retrospect is I didn't know what I didn't know. And I want to say that educators should not have to do this work alone. It's too much. And that's where nonprofits come in, who will be that shoulder partner, because there is no silver bullet, as Dr. Bell said. There's no silver bullet. It's about organizing ourselves in a way and prepping the system for change to get better results. And at times that means strategically abandoning things we've done to create the space for the new. Because educators have so many demands on them, it becomes initiative overload. So this also creates the space to decide what comes off of the plate to create space for what's new. And I want to say finally, universities need to be a part of this reinventing, because the teachers you're receiving need to have that background knowledge that you are inventing in KDIS State so that they can step right in and support you in the work.
Awesome, and so thank you for that, Dr. Weeden. Again, I go back to just your acknowledgement of the hard work that has been done, but how much more we have to go in the wraparound services piece. There was a point where Texas was leading the nation in suicides among teens, and that number started to slowly uptick after Harvey. Now, I haven't checked the recent numbers, but I'd be curious to see if that, because I've heard of instances of that happening. In fact, one of the districts I support just had a trustee that served on the board. Their daughter just, had a misfortune where she lost her life as well. So I know that wraparound services is so crucially important. And so I'm going to move us on to our next question. Thank you guys for that. This is our final question before the final question, sort of. This was one that when we're having conversations on our education committee, to your point about it, we rely on education so much that we forget that there's other partners in there. And so this is why I want you guys to tell parents and community members exactly what can parents, guardians, caregivers do to partner with school districts to form a coalition of support around kids. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Caskey, if that's okay.
Right. I think as a parent, the most important thing is being present in your child's life, right? And asking your child questions and really being that partner, and also being a partner with your school. Serving at a district level is a little different, but really getting to know your students' teachers. I mean, the teacher in the classroom is the one who makes the biggest difference. They have the greatest impact on student learning. So I would encourage parents to reach out to their students' teachers to form those relationships, to keep teachers involved and aware of what may be happening at home as well. And also, we provide a lot of resources online. Reaching out on our website, I know through the curriculum department, we put a ton of resources out there that are being provided free of charge through Texas Education Agency. And so we want to make sure that parents have those resources and access to those resources as well. But first and foremost is really forging those relationships. Again, we go back to relationships and people, and reaching out to the teachers and working together in partnership and collaboration.
So thank you for that. So what if I'm a parent and I got this on a feed and I'm watching, I'm like, man, I don't know anything about, I haven't gotten any scores, I don't know what to start, I know they're in 4th grade, they took a test, but so what would you recommend to that parent?
Well, at KDIC, they do have access to all of that because they received an email as to how to get on and to see their students' scores. So that's a place to start as well as going back to the campus. A counselor is also a great place to start. But our parents do receive those emails and get access to, we have access to so much online through our student portal, grades, reports, scores. You could probably elaborate on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So in addition to what Dr. Caskey is saying, I think the main thing to remember is that we partnered very well in March of 2020 when we had to pivot. And so let's establish and remember we were all struggling through that pandemic together. So I think parents, and I'm a parent as well, we really got to see the day-to-day and what that looks like. And so for me, it's just being really empathetic and recognizing that if as a parent, when we went through the pandemic and then depending on how your student learned last year, you got to see firsthand what some of those things teachers deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so, be empathetic, assume good intentions. If there is something that you don't know, just ask. Everybody is trying to go through this together. So we are partners in this. The school cannot be successful without a strong partnership from the parents and the community. And so knowing that we're working together for the same thing is what's really important. And honoring all of our expertise. Parents have expertise about their children that we need to know at the school level. And so being open in how we're communicating with each other, I think is really important. And so the resources are there, and if you can't find them, contact your child's school. They will help you navigate the resources that are available, because we truly are in this together, and we cannot do it in isolation.
Thank you for that. I think another thing I will add to that, being a former principal, would be also is understanding that when the school district makes a decision, they're just not making a decision for your one child and your one, they have to think about the whole collective, all of the students that they serve, when they're making the decision and thinking what decision is going to best help all students. And so for parents, to Dr. Bell's point, give educators some grace around these pieces, because some of the things we're figuring out as it happens, really. And the person who helps us figure out how it happens is Dr. Weeden.
Well, I would add that powerful word, grace, and couple it with truth. Grace and truth. We have a family support office. So for families, maybe you're a parent who didn't have a good experience in school, and the last place you want to go is a school because it makes you sort of have a PTSD moment. Reach out to NIHOUSE, 713-664-7676, and ask for our family support office so that we can become an ally to help you. I stand on the pulpit of literacy because if you have a scholar who's struggling with reading, the first job of any student is to learn how to be a skilled reader. And if they fail at that job, they can give up on all other content areas, because to be a great mathematician, you need to have the academic vocabulary to navigate math, etc. So if you get reading right, you can get so many other things right. As a parent, do everything you can to create the conditions for learning for your child and ensure they're a skilled reader. And we're here to help with that. In the future, with jobs that will be created, we have no idea what they'll be, right? But we know that to access those, you must be literate. So that is the thing you must hold on to with all your might. And as a parent, if you have struggles as a reader, you're dyslexic and never receive services, we provide adult literacy services. So that need not be a barrier to you. Because as a parent, if you're struggling, it's hard to translate literacy skills to your child and know how to do that intentionally. So we want to empower you to do that as well. So again, you may have your own barriers, but don't let that stop you. You can do what you need to do for yourself and for your children, and you can transform your family tree through literacy.
Amazing. That's awesome. And so that concludes our round of 2-minute questions. We do have a closing segment that I'm about to pop into, where we're going to give 1 minute for you guys just to respond. I believe that the brain appreciates, likes clean openings and clean closings, but I also believe in isn't ending on a super positive note, right? Which it actually was a positive conversation because you guys all framed it in that way. But when I was constructing the script, I was like, man, this is really heavy stuff. Let me throw a positive on the end. So I will say, we're going to start with you, Dr. Weeden, on this one. Is what has been something that you've been most proud of when working with educators, teachers, parents, and or the community during this pandemic?
Oh, what a good question. The most proud of is leaders who are willing to be vulnerable and open about their needs. Because if they can put their oxygen mask on, whether it's thinking through and problem solving, whether it is what I'm doing is my ladder against the right wall, it's not just about working hard. They're working so hard, it's doing the right work. And so when I meet those leaders who are willing to be in spaces like this and be very open and vulnerable, that makes me proud. That gives me hope, that gives me joy. And then when I see them adopt some of the things that we can share as a shoulder partner to build human potential, that leadership capacity, that teacher capacity, and you see the transformative effects on children in schools, that's where it's at.
Thank you for being here.
I'm honored.
Dr. Bell?
I would have to say I'm just most proud of the way educators stepped up and came together. And, when I can sit in a room and we have meetings and you have our maintenance department that's in there, you have our school leadership team that's in there, health services, this was a problem that touched every single department. So we have to collaborate, and just the synergy that has come from that has just really makes me inspired. And we see things, we see the big picture and how all of the different pieces come together. And so, taking that as we continue to build back and to continue to meet the needs of our campuses, we have just come together like never before. And we've been through a lot. Hurricanes and freezes. We've been in the midst of a pandemic. We have the freeze on top of that, but still, there's never a moment when we all, from our various departments, have not come together to support one another and fill in wherever we need to. And so that makes me very proud as an educator. that we know what to do. We know what to do when we come together, and it doesn't matter where you serve, what level you serve. When we're talking about children, they're all of our children, and we see this fixed system is really large, but when we bring our human potential together, it's amazing what we can overcome.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. And last word to you, Dr.
Yeah,
Caskey.
absolutely. Just kind of playing off that same concept. I just feel very proud to be a part of KDISD and how we came together as a learning organization, because it was kind of, as an instructional leader, I felt like I kind of had to take a step back for a minute because safety came first, right? But I still had a seat at that table. So we did school, and we did school very, very well. And we did it in a safe environment for our students. And as Dr. Bell said, it took all hands on deck and no complaints. We just figured it out. Everything that came at us as things changed, as governor's rules changed, and we never knew which way to go, and pivot was the word of the year, right? But we came together and we did it as a team, and we did it for our kids, and I think that's evidence of the results that we see for our students. And Katie, just proud to be a part of the team.
Yes, you guys did, and you guys deserve, I support 19 school districts across this region, and you guys were by far one of the most top districts with getting things done across the board, even the community. So kudos to you guys, and we always want to be here as a support for KDISD. So we're going to thank everyone for coming out and tuning in online. We appreciate the Education Division Committee for bringing this programming to our business and community. I do want to acknowledge, because there are some board members and committee members in the audience that I would like to acknowledge. So someone who also serves on the board of directors with me for the K Area Chambers, Ms. Margaret Laney back there. Hello. And then we have one of our board members for the Education Committee here, or committee members for the Education Committee. That's Mr. Jason Burdine. Thank you for joining us, former Fort Bend School Board president and trustee extraordinaire. So thank you guys for coming out and supporting this event. And I'm going to pass it on to the man who really makes it all happen. Matthew Ferrara is the president and CEO of the Katy Area Chamber. He's also a Fighting Texas Aggie, which, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Long, and thank you for this incredible panel that gave a very informative and in-depth discussion on literacy and for our schools. So thank you all for tuning in and joining today. We appreciate our division committee, especially Dr. Wrong and Mr. Burdine back there, for bringing programming to our business and community members to stay informed on real knowledge around these complex issues that impact the lives of Katy children. I just wanted to share, as Dr. Long said earlier, that this kicks off our fall series of programs for the Education Division. September 17th, we have our State of the Schools, where we have all 3 superintendents for Lamar, Katy, and Royal ISD will be giving a presentation and update. On October 14th, we have our State of Higher Education with all of our higher education partners giving their updates and forecasts as well, and as well as education candidates forums, and Back to School with the Board is something new that we're going to be doing this year as well. So thank you all for being here today, and we appreciate you tuning in.